It's Monday, which means another Mock Draft Monday here on the channel, and this one is a very special edition, as it's not just a regular mock draft the way we've been doing the entire year. This is on the first Monday of the tampering period where free agents are starting to choose their new homes. We already have a lot of players deciding on where they're going to be playing. None of this is exactly official, but it pretty much is. None of this really becomes official until the first day of the new league year on Wednesday. I believe that's the 12th. So, Milton Williams from the Eagles to the Patriots. There are a number of different moves that have happened, and some of that is being factored into today's mock draft, although not everything. As some of these, if you look at the way they're going to be structured, there are short-term deals or band-aids, and sometimes teams don't necessarily draft with this in mind of, okay, we've signed a quarterback, now a quarterback is completely off the table, and you can do that with any different position. So that's important to note, but some of that is being factored in where, okay, maybe they don't need to address this with their first pick, and I guess let's go ahead and jump into things. Now, the Titans made one of the more interesting signings of this period with Dan Moore from the Steelers getting, I think, $82 million to be the new starting left tackle of the Titans. It's a ridiculously bad contract. I'll be talking about that and more in a video that probably comes out tomorrow, so stay on the lookout for that. But I think there is also still a really good chance that they stick and pick at one and take Cam Ward if they think he can be their quarterback of the future. Certainly a chance. Apparently people within the building have that idea. There's not really any real need for the Titans to play that up. They have their options wide open. We know the Giants probably want to move up for that number 1 overall pick. I think the Titans probably would want to move down. However, we don't know if that's going to happen yet. So it's just speculation at this point. The bottom line for me is that the Titans still need a quarterback, and Cam Ward is one of the best in the draft with probably, the highest upside that you're going to find here at the top. So Cam Ward is the first overall pick in this mock draft to the Tennessee Titans, as the Browns have options. They really do. Do they want to go quarterback? Because Shedeur Sanders is absolutely in play, even if he's not necessarily the pick. Or do they want to go best player available, which is either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter? I really think they could go either of these players. They both would fill needs. They are both in contention to be the best player in this draft, best prospect overall. Hunter, obviously, the unbelievable versatility, where Carter is just such a dominant player as well at a more valuable position overall. I've talked about kind of the tiers of value for positions, and you see teams kind of draft based off this, especially in the top 5, top 10. Quarterbacks at the top. No doubt, I don't think anyone would question that quarterback is the most valuable position in the league. And then the next tier down is offensive tackle, the guys who protect the quarterback, and edge, the guys that go after the quarterback. It's all, revolving around QB, okay? And then in tier 3, corner, receiver, interior defensive line. And then nowadays, you're starting to talk about guard, even getting into that category, that tier, but probably the next tier down. Obviously, near the bottom, you find your linebackers, safeties, tight ends, running backs. But at the top, I think edge is that second most valuable position, maybe tied for second with offensive tackle. Abdul Carter, I think, is in play here to be the second overall pick. Since our last mock draft, Myles Garrett has surprisingly signed a massive contract extension to stay in Cleveland. Seemed like those two sides were pretty far apart. Garrett was really looking to go elsewhere. Money talks. It's the ultimate motivator here, whether that be with the NFL or you and your regular job at home. You can't really fault these guys for saying, okay, I'm going to set myself up for a lifetime taking this type of money. You really can't. However, they still need to improve their pass rush overall. With Carter maybe being the best player in the draft here, you can't really go wrong with getting him on one side, Myles Garrett on the other, and really creating problems for an opposing quarterback and, of course, offensive line. This video is sponsored by Arena Club. I've always been really big into collecting cards since I was a kid, and in fact, I even had a second channel a couple years ago where I used to rip open boxes of sports cards baseball or football, it didn't matter. I love the thrill of not knowing who you're going to get and hopefully pulling your favorite players. And now with arenaclub.com and their slab packs, you can relive that feeling and those moments. Let's check out the Arena Club slab packs. A bunch of different sports and Pokemon. You can rip packs digitally with a fully transparent checklist. You got unmatched value and exciting chases for some of your favorite players. Let's go ahead and open some packs. Of course, you got some different options here. Multi-sport, the varying in prices, all different types. Get the gold in here. Football is, of course, where we're going to be living. And here we go, ready to reveal our slabs. Who are we going to get? Gold Football Arena Club slab pack. And inside, survey says, ooh, Travis Kelce. It's a very popular name. 2013 rookie card here from Panini Score. And a fun feature is that Arena Club will actually offer you on the price of the card. Here we have a $36 offer. Probably decide later on that. So we've navigated to our showroom where we can see that Travis Kelce that we just pulled, the Will Myers from last time we were on Arena Club. Of course, you're trying to get lucky, right? That's the chase. You're trying to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price with Arena Club. And of course, it provides real value. You can see clear hit rates defined for each pack that you're going to pull. And of course, after your pulls are revealed, you can throw them in your vault for safekeeping. You can navigate to the different tabs up here on the top. Arena Club will officially grade your pulls. The process is fast, accurate, and completely transparent about why each card received the grade that it did. Everything here is completely transparent. You can see exact hit rates for every different card that you're going to find. We, of course, pulled the Travis Kelce. So go see what you can get in the description below, arenaclub.com/Bengal. Use code Bengal. You'll get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase. Again, that's arenaclub.com/Bengal. Use code Bengal. Link is down in the description. At 3, I think the Giants would love to have Travis Hunter on the board. I still also think that the Giants are going to be in kind of a desperate situation and force themselves into a quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders happens to be on the board. I really would like Travis Hunter in this scenario. I think he's arguably the best player in the draft. The Giants have a need at corner. They have a need at receiver. They should just take best player available. They're not a year away. Instead, they go with Shedeur Sanders, who does have the potential to be the best quarterback in this draft class and might be the best day one quarterback in this draft class. However, I think the upside is somewhat limited. Like, things have to go absolutely perfect, and he can absolutely be a good quarterback. There's no question. Shedeur might be the best quarterback in the draft. He's accurate. He's the most accurate QB in this draft. He's played behind a really bad offensive line. You'd like to think that he's able to throw with anticipation behind a better offensive line, get the ball out on time, and especially on target. Maybe the overall athleticism and arm talent or arm strength in general hold him back a little bit, but in terms of a day one starting quarterback option, Shedeur probably is near the top of this list, which makes me wonder, okay, if the Giants were to bring in Aaron Rodgers, as is a rumor, it's a possibility, although not a certainty, and things might happen as I'm recording this that change what we do in this mock draft, it seems like the Giants are going to want to take a QB anyway, but why not shoot for the stars more than the high floor guy in Shedeur Sanders and take, someone down the board with a little bit more upside if you're already going to have that bridge quarterback. Getting a guy that, what's his ceiling going to be? What's the advantage really of sitting him for a year or two or more and developing him? I don't know, but it's a possibility. Giants go Shedeur Sanders at 3. Setting the Patriots up at 4 to go Travis Hunter. Again, just arguably the best player in the draft. The Patriots have been very active in free agency. They brought in Carlton Davis to be that CB2 on the other side of Christian Gonzalez. Gonzo is one of the best players in the league, or best young players, certainly one of the best young corners. Hunter could still play corner in this scenario, but he's arguably the best receiver prospect in this draft as well. The Patriots absolutely need that. I think they did bring in Mac Hollins. That's a signing. There are a lot of new signings. I'm going to be going over a lot of them in a video, so again, stay tuned for that. But I think Hunter is just BPA, kind of the clear and obvious pick. And the Jags have been fairly active as well. They bring in Dyami Brown. They have made a lot of moves at receiver, cutting guys like Josh Reynolds, trading away Christian Kirk to Houston. They're kind of set up to go BPA, and I think that could just be Mason Graham. I know it's kind of boring to go Mason Graham like every mock draft that I do here for Jacksonville, but with these guys off the board, like this top four, if Travis Hunter or Carter gets there, I think they would pull the trigger, especially Travis Hunter is a great fit. But outside of that, it's like, would they go McMillan at 5? Maybe. I honestly think that Tyler Warren makes a ton of sense, and I got pushback for saying that on Twitter, that it's not impossible now after cutting Evan Ingram that the Jags would consider Tyler Warren. And I know Brenton Strange, but Warren is a better player, especially he would project to be in the future. Warren's great. I mean, 6'6", 260, can block a little bit. Obviously a fantastic weapon in the passing game. And I think a really good fit in Liam Cohen's offense as well. And he's arguably a top 5 player in this draft. And I know it's a tight end, though. You guys are thinking too much about the position and not about the player. And with kind of the blue chip players starting to go off the board a little bit here, Carter and Hunter especially, and those top tier players at the most valuable positions going off the board, this is where Warren starts to make a lot of sense. But do go Mason Graham there instead. And the Raiders, kind of the same idea there with Warren, end up going with Ashton Jeanty. The Raiders have also been active. They traded for Geno Smith. I think that takes them out of the day one quarterback conversation, to be honest. Maybe if Sanders gets there, they would consider it, but I think with Geno there, they're not going to reach for any of these other quarterbacks at 6. It would be malpractice, although, I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, especially with the Raiders, although different regimes. But Sebastian Janikowski, a kicker, was a first-round pick this century for the Oakland Raiders. I know they're in Las Vegas now, trying to escape that. They moved away. They drafted a kicker in the first round, and a very good kicker. But they drafted a kicker in the first round. Anyway, Jeanty's arguably the best player in this draft. He's up there with those top 3, with Hunter, with Carter. I think he's number 3 in my opinion, but he's right up there. He's an incredibly talented player, and I think the Raiders are in a really good position to just go with BPA, Ashton Jeanty at number 6 overall. Jets at 7. So I did one in advance. I'm going to be making some changes here. I have Armand Membou, and it's starting to get tough for me to get away from that. They lose Morgan Moses to free agency, as was expected. And I know when I talked about this last week, some Jets fans were unhappy. If we go tackle 2 years in a row, it's like, do you see the best teams in the league? Yeah, a receiver's fun, right? It's, I love fantasy football. Let's go with a receiver or whatever. Teams are made to win in the trenches. The teams with the best offensive lines are typically the best offenses. It's very clear and obvious, especially if you watch Philadelphia. If you have an option to build your O-line of the future, get 2 young, bookend, phenomenal athletic offensive tackles in Olu Fashanu and Armand Membou, you are set for the future at those positions if everything goes right in their development. Why? And he might be the best player available as well. Why is this not a good pick? It's stupidity. I think I don't know. People don't like offensive line and defense. It's not as exciting as a receiver or a quarterback or a running back. They bring in Justin Fields. It's important to protect that guy. Short-term deal. Quarterback, I guess, could be in play, depending on who gets there or what's available down the board. But Membou, I think, is just the best selection here right now. I thought about Tyler Warren here. I thought about potentially, Teteroa McMillan, but Membou, I think, ends up making the most sense. At number 8, a lot of options here as well. The Panthers have been quite active in free agency. They bring back J.C. Horn on an extension. They bring in Bobby Brown to play the nose. They bring in Tershawn Wharton. So that interior defensive line's getting upgraded. What needs still upgrading on the defense, though, is something off the edge. And you've got some really great ones available here. I'm going to go Shamar Stewart. He's an incredible athlete. And if you watch him on film, he is a good pass rusher. I know the production is not there, and that scares a lot of people away. I think we've seen what he can continue to do throughout the offseason. Senior Bowl practices, the guy was unstoppable and obviously tore up the combine as well. But I think he's going to end up being quite a productive NFL player. And it's going to seem silly that we were talking about, okay, he's got 4.5 sacks in his college career. It's like you got to think about the roles he was playing at the weight he was playing at. He was 290 pounds. He's not necessarily always a true pass rush, get after the quarterback edge. He's down to like 270. He's still a freak athlete, and I think has a really, really good chance to go top 10. He may end up falling more than that, but I think the upside is undeniable, and I think a team takes a shot on him, takes a chance on him pretty high in this draft. As we get to the Saints at 9, Will Campbell's tempting. I'm going to go Tyler Warren. I think he's one of the best players in this draft, and the Saints just need more. Tight end especially is a position worth upgrading here. Warren is a great player, offers a ton of upside as an inline tight end. He can be a focal point in an offense, and I think this is just a phenomenal fit and a weapon, I guess, for Derek Carr at quarterback. Likes to work with tight ends, and Warren certainly is a really, really good one. And I know people have been saying, oh, he's not Brock Bowers. He's not going top 5 or top 10. One, this is not last year's draft class, so I don't know what we're doing with that comparison. It's a completely different set of players. Like, why would Brock Bowers going at 12 last year or whatever it was have any bearing on Tyler Warren? And there were things, that dropped Brock Bowers a little bit. I think the overall height and weight hurt him a little bit for a true tight end, but obviously I was super high on him as a player. I knew he was going to be an incredible receiving threat at the position, and we saw him get utilized fantastically. Year 1 in Las Vegas, put up incredible numbers, and now all of a sudden everyone's like, well, I mean, he should have been a top 5 pick. It's like, well, why not Tyler Warren? He's not the same level of dynamic receiver athlete that Brock Bowers is. Like, he's not going to catch a slant and take it to the house. Brock Bowers is a truly special receiving tight end. But Warren has a ton of upside as a player. He has great jump ball ability. He has great ability after the catch. He's more of a power type of guy, and he can block a little bit. He's obviously got great size as well. I think he ends up being certainly a top 15 pick. I don't think he gets by the Colts, but top 10, maybe even top 5, I don't think is absolutely out of the question. And this next one's going to get, listen, if I'm already defending Tyler Warren, this next one's not going to go over great. Here's what we're going to do. The Bears, man, what a free agency so far. They signed Dayo Odeyingbo off the edge as a rotational option. I think edge is still in play here, very much so at 10. They still have high picks in this draft. 39, 41, although my face cam covering that up a little bit, and 72 in the top 75 and top 148. They've got a pick at 149. But 4 picks solidly in the top 100. And they could certainly look to take an edge rusher at 39 and 41. I think still Will Campbell's in play. Now, they traded for Joe Thuney, all-pro left guard. They traded for Jonah Jackson, has had great success in a Ben Johnson offense at right guard, right? And then today they signed Drew Dahlman, who is a good starting center. The O-line has been rebuilt. Have Darnell Wright at right tackle, Braxton Jones at left tackle. It could still be a tackle. Will Campbell at left tackle makes sense. However, I think there's a non-zero chance, some of you probably already know where I'm going with this, that this is Omarion Hampton. It seems high. It does, because he hasn't been mocked up here. Now, is Omarion Hampton one of the best 15 players in this draft? He probably is. He probably is. Big-time playability at running back. Obvious, huge power. I mean, he's 6 foot 220-ish, 6'1", 220. And he's got the ability to stay patient, power through arm tackles, and then run by people. Omarion Hampton is a big-time playmaker at the running back position. Ben Johnson, the new head coach of the Bears, has seen what that can do for an offense. It seems early, right? But I bring it back to the Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs draft. And someone thought, are you comparing Omarion Hampton to Bijan Robinson? This is not what's happening as a player. It's the scenario. Bijan ends up going at 8 to Atlanta, which is maybe where he could have gone, right? Seemed a bit early. And then at 12, the Lions, after trading back, took Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Now, in that draft, there was a thought that Jahmyr Gibbs could sneak into the first round. I remember like Cincinnati around the mid-20s or late 20s could have been a spot for him. But it's like, okay, he's not a bona fide first-round pick. Jahmyr Gibbs went at 12. Hampton has already got first-round hype. He's already a first-round caliber player in maybe a not-so-great draft class in general, which people hate when I say that. Guys, if you look into it at all, beyond just the names and guys getting hyped up, this is not that good of a draft class. It's got depth, right? But again, if you talk to, guys within the community, and that's, former scouts or current scouts, and you read up on what guys like Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah are saying, the difference in player between 15 and 60 is not significant. That sounds insane because, it's the first round. They're clearly amazing. It's like, not necessarily in terms of prospect, right? You have had a couple of blue chip players, but if you really read into things, and I kind of view this as well from a lot of the players that I've watched, there might be 12 or 15 true first round type of players. Maybe 15 that would be first round talents, right? Maybe. And then down through the second round, the player doesn't really change that much in terms of what they are as a prospect. Not a tremendous amount, which is why the first round can end up getting really crazy, especially in the back end, because you're going to have teams with very different grades that might value a guy way higher than what we're seeing right now. Like when some of these guys sneak into the first that you're not expecting, it's because we're getting so used to a certain consensus media big board that NFL teams do not share. Anyway, Hampton is one of the best players overall in this draft. The Bears have gone out and addressed the edge a little bit with Odeyingbo. Still could be an edge rusher here. They've revamped their entire offensive line and now get a big-time playmaker at running back. I could see it happening, is what I'm saying. It does seem early, but Gentry's off the board. They're still looking to get a big-time threat at running back here. I know the running back class down the board is quite good, but it's quite good, right? I really like Caleb Johnson as well. Henderson's quite good. Judkins. But if they view Hampton as a true tier above those guys, I don't think you're waiting. You might want to trade down and try to get Hampton if possible, right? But here in this scenario, with BPA in mind, for a team that also needs a running back, I think Hampton does make sense given where the Bears are as a roster. At 11, San Francisco 49ers, I am going to go Will Campbell here. You lose a starting tackle, Jalen Moore, to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Will Campbell's got a chance to be a replacement. And, obviously, like Jalen Moore has had a history of starting and not starting, and then got a ton of money to probably be a starter in Kansas City. I know, like, McKivitz has been an option at right tackle. Obviously, when healthy, Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the league, or just about. Will Campbell can play really, you'd think, any of the guard spots, right tackle or left tackle, if you're going to stick him out there. Again, the arm length maybe pushes him inside. But this just might be the best player available. The 49ers have had a lot leave in free agency. Drake Greenlaw is going to be a Bronco. Talanoa Hufanga is going to be a Bronco. Again, Jalen Moore is headed to Kansas City. The 49ers kind of need to go best player available here. It's probably going to be something in the trenches. Deebo Samuel, of course, is a Commander now. A lot has happened. But Will Campbell might just be BPA and at a position of need. Gives you flexibility across the offensive line. It might just be the obvious selection here for San Francisco. Cowboys at 12, going Tetairoa McMillan. Options here on the other side of the ball that I like, but McMillan, big-bodied receiver to add, get a weapon for Dak Prescott, and of course, CeeDee Lamb, that flexibility on the outside or in the slot. T-Mac offers honestly some similar flexibility, even though they're very different players. Big catch radius, a lot to like there with Tetairoa McMillan at 12 to Dallas. And then at 13, I think things are really wide open here for Miami. Could be something on the interior. They've not really done a lot on the offensive line so far in free agency. There's plenty of time left, but a lot of these top-tier dominoes are falling. And I think O-line is the most likely pick here. Malachi Starks, Nick Eamon-Worry also do make a ton of sense for a team likely to lose Javon Holland, although maybe by the time that I've put this video out, he's on a team. That's a possibility. Or he's re-signed with Miami. I don't know. However, Kelvin Banks on the board. He's got the flexibility to maybe move inside a guard. I think he might be in that conversation for best player available at a position of need here. And Miami looks to upgrade their offensive line. it just kind of seems like an obvious selection. At 14, the Colts have been very active. They went out, they signed Charvarius Ward, huge upgrade at corner. Cam Bynum to play safety. They're really looking into that secondary. It just makes it so much more obvious that I think they're comfortable taking either Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, whomever, if any of them, get available at 14. Loveland makes a ton of sense here. He's an extremely gifted athlete, and I think, Chris Ballard's really going to love that. Look at his draft history. It's the great athletes, and they obviously need a weapon at tight end. Loveland is a phenomenal fit. Again, he's arguably one of the best 10 players in this draft. Him getting outside of the top 10 is not even a given at this point. Like, there's a chance Warren goes 5 or 7, and then Loveland is 9 or maybe even 10 to the Bears, depending on what they want to do. Right? It's not a given that Loveland gets here, and the Dolphins are a dark horse to consider a tight end at 13 there as well, depending on who gets there, of course. At 15, you have the Atlanta Falcons. I know they don't do this, right? They don't upgrade their pass rush. Edge is still weak. They just lost Grady Jarrett to Chicago as well. I don't think I even mentioned him. But I'm going to end up going Jalen Walker here. I do think he ends up going in the top half of the first round, top 16. And he's a Georgia player, in-state, obviously with Atlanta here. I know Terry Fontenot, unlikely to do that, it seems, but I don't know why. It's just a weird coincidence, I'm thinking. Walker's a great player, super high upside, gives you a position of need here as well, and he's maybe one of the best 10 players in this draft. Don't overthink it. Take the high upside upgrade on defense. Apparently, really high character, great leader guy as well. Teams are going to love that. And when they're not, they have the potential to fall. And that's maybe what we're hearing right now with Walter Nolan, with James Pierce, potentially with Mike Green, with some old allegations. It's worth noting as we get to the Cardinals at 16. Still needs on the interior D-line. I'm not sure there's a player that totally matches up here. Derek Harmon, maybe, right? But Nolan, it seems, might slide a little bit. Kenneth Grant might slide a little bit. It's still early for Darius Alexander anyway. And then they go out and bring in Josh Sweat in free agency, which was a given. I'm honestly surprised they didn't get Milton Williams also. He's headed to New England, of course. But Josh Sweat is a Cardinal. Maybe there's not the biggest threat of going something off the edge here. With B.J. Ojulari coming back from injury, I think they're going to be able to hold on to Baron Browning, right? So, and that's not a given necessarily. I think he's got another year left. I could be wrong. He could be a free agent. We'll see if they re-sign him. I know they traded for him, but the Cardinals could look to upgrade their offensive line. And you look at the players available, you look at someone that has crushed the offseason process so far, it's Gray Zabel. He offers you maybe flexibility to play tackle if there's an injury or something like that, but he's also a day one starting guard, and I think a good fit for this offense as well. Gray Zabel, to me, is going to be going in the first round. Is this a bit early for him? Maybe. It's the top half. He is a true guard at this point. He's got 32-inch arms. He's not really going to be playing tackle, again, unless there's an injury. So is this too early for him at guard? It's a plug-and-play starter, which is tough to find, especially at 16. I think it's a pretty good pickup for Arizona that absolutely needs to upgrade that O-line in some capacity. Zabel ends up being my pick, and that's actually a pick I have changed from the original draft. I did have a guard, though. I had Tyler Booker. I think Zabel just is maybe more of a fit. Cincinnati at 17. They've got to upgrade their defense. And again, same thing with Jalen Walker. This is a super high upside option that I think could go a lot higher than this. Like, Williams could end up being a top 10 pick comfortably. This might scare Bengals fans a little bit because this is another projectable edge, but Williams is in a different class compared to a guy like Myles Murphy. Williams, of course, has great size, 6'5", 265, and is a really, really good athlete. Super long arms, but good burst off the line as well. Terrorized Texas at times in their matchups this year. Played injured throughout 2024. His best football is absolutely ahead of him, and the Bengals just need to get better. Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade. Mykel Williams just seems to check a lot of boxes here for Cincinnati, who may also consider receiver. I don't know that they're going to be able to afford T. Higgins. He got tagged. We'll see if he gets traded, but I don't know if he's going to be extended. So you could draft a receiver here preparing for the 2026 season anyway. At 18, have the Seattle Seahawks. Mass exodus for beloved Seahawks. DK Metcalf is a Steeler. Tyler Lockett is a free agent. Geno Smith has been traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, they did bring back a big-time linebacker, right? So, with Ernest Jones coming back, you've got some options here. We do know it's unlikely to be a guard because they don't do that. John Schneider doesn't seem to do that in the round one. And also, which guard are you going to take? Like Tyler Booker, that's your only option, really, with this pick, or you're considering a tackle. I mean, Donovan Jackson, I guess, could be a guard as well. He played guard at Ohio State mostly and has shown the ability to potentially move outside to tackle and play tackle at a high level. Did so throughout the CFP for Ohio State. But for the Seahawks here, losing DK, you still have JSN. I think you need more weapons at receiver. I mean, you've lost your two biggest ones. How about Matthew Golden from Texas? Horns up, Texas player in the first round last year, Texas player in the first round this year. And I think Golden's someone that is going to offer you great route running ability, great hands, and obviously plus speed from his 40 time. I don't think he played quite to that speed, and I got some pushback for saying that in my last video. Listen, I've seen every snap Matthew Golden has played in 2024 for Texas. Saw a lot at Houston, especially after he transferred in. Matthew Golden is not a 4.29 on the field guy. He's got good speed. He does not have world-class, game-breaking burner speed. It is plus speed, but he's not a 4.29 guy on the field. And some guys are able to run faster than they play. Golden plays pretty fast. He just doesn't play to that speed. Doesn't mean he's slow. He wins in other ways, right? And Texas couldn't really push the ball downfield. They didn't have a quarterback who was able to throw the football down the field, especially as a problem. But Golden is a great option. I think he's going to be reliable. I think he can play on the outside and in the slot. And obviously you have your big-time slot receiver in Jackson Smith-Njigba. But I think receiver with Sam Darnold now signing with Seattle, you got to get him some weapons. Matthew Golden to 18 makes sense to me. I also really considered guys like Nick Eamon-Worry at this spot, also considered something off the edge, but in the end, it was Matthew Golden for me. At number 19 here, the Bucs went out. They signed Hassan Reddick. I don't really think that changes a whole lot for Tampa. I still think they kind of had the same needs that they had going into free agency. Things could change. Of course, that's important to note here, even as I'm recording this video. But I think given the free agency status of Levante David, I really think that Jahad Campbell makes a ton of sense. He's a big body, over 6'2", 240 pounds, is good in coverage, and especially as good as a blitzer, either off the edge or inside. Jahad Campbell is a great player. He can be a spot dropper, he can be a QB spy, but he can be truly good in coverage as well. And I feel like with his ability as a true pass rusher, you're getting a real versatile guy that can excel in a lot of different areas. And I love this pick for Tampa. Yes, guys like James Pierce, Mike Green, still available. You know, guys can rise up the board due to character, of course, right? And guys can fall the same way. Mike Green with past allegations, James Pierce with some reported character issues, Walter Nolan with some maturity, and that could just end up dropping those guys, and that could push a guy like Malachi Starks up the board, and Jahdae Barron up the board. I still have them available here, but it's important to at least note that. Jahad Campbell, great player, is the pick there at 19. I think he ends up going top 20. He's a linebacker, so maybe not, but I really, really like him as a player. And then we get to the Broncos at 20. The Broncos here, I think, well, they've been active so far in free agency. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, still need an offensive playmaker. It is tough to turn down Will Johnson. I think CB2 is not without upgrade possibility there for Denver. Like, I think they could upgrade CB2 very easily. Will Johnson would be a really, really nice pickup there. I think it'd be tough to turn down, but the more I look at the Broncos, the more I think they invest in a playmaking offensive player at this position. That's a weird way to say it, or at this position in the draft. Losing Javonte Williams to the Broncos, or from the Broncos to the Cowboys, 1 year, $3 million, you're not going to lose sleep over that. Could this be a running back? I don't think it's out of the question that Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson could be in play here, but I'm also super high on Luther Burden, and I think he ends up being a first-round pick. I think he can excel from the slot. I think he can play on the outside. think he is a big-time weapon here. Of course, it's easy to connect the Sean Payton to Ohio State receiver dot, obviously, and Ibuka is available, but Burden, I think, is just very clearly the better player, better prospect, and the Broncos, who are probably going to go out and look to add a playmaker here at number 20, if not trading up, getting one even higher. Burden, such a talented guy, and I think makes a lot of sense to Denver at 20. And then the Steelers probably don't overthink it. They just go Will Johnson at 21. He's, I think, still one of the best players in this draft. Why is he dropping? Well, he's not testing at all. Not at the combine. Who knows what he's going to do at his pro day. Probably not run a 40. We'll see. Maybe he gets a fast track, fast time. But short arms, too. 9th percentile for arms. That's tough for a press man corner. And he just could end up dropping. I do think he's still a top 10 player in the draft. This is not an indictment on Will Johnson. It's just there's a real chance that he falls. Looking at some of these teams that would consider taking a corner, I guess you'd see the Niners as a fit. But, I mean, it's not a guarantee that the Colts would after bringing in Charvarius Ward. Maybe the Falcons. The Cardinals have a pretty good young group of corners. Like the Bengals, maybe. I think Seattle's not out of the question. Tampa, but here he falls to 21. Steelers grab a falling star. We see falls all the time. Falling to 21 is not that crazy if he's not a guaranteed top 10 pick. At number 22, power run. It's what the Chargers love to do, and they go out and make that happen with this pickup. Going Tyler Booker from Alabama here. Plug-and-play starter in a guard, and I feel like Booker, he's not going to be a good fit in every offense. You look at like a classic zone running scheme, he's not really going to be the best fit, but he's a powerful guy. He can definitely facilitate in you running the ball down somebody else's throat. And I think for the Chargers, that's what they want to do. That's what they want their identity to be, even with Justin Herbert at quarterback. I think Booker lets you do that. They've gone out, they brought back Khalil Mack in free agency. They did lose Poona Ford to the Rams. They brought in Dante Jackson at corner. Edge is absolutely in play. Absolutely. But I'm looking like, what would Jim Harbaugh and company do here? And you think taking an offensive lineman, especially when it's a huge position of need, not necessarily out of the question here. Packers at 23. It just feels like a Packers pick for me. Like, you bring in Nate Hobbs. I love that. It's a cheap deal. There's like, I think only $16 million guaranteed. He's one of the best slot corners in the league, really. And he could potentially play on the boundary in Green Bay, but could also still be a great slot option. That's not really a fit for Jahdae Barron anymore, in my opinion, because I don't know that Barron is a boundary corner. He's got short arms. He's smaller in general. He tested really well in the 40. I don't necessarily think that he's that level of athlete, even though I love him as a player. He's so instinctive. He's got a nose for the football, really, but I think he's a slot nickel corner at the next level. I don't know that he's going to be a boundary, and I don't think he's a good fit for the Green Bay defense. With all the press man that they play, Barron is just not a fit there for me. So I don't think that's really in play. And I think they're going to look to do something on the defensive line. They signed Aaron Banks. Oh my God, it's a peculiar signing. It's up there with the Dan Moore signing. It's up there, right? I don't really know what they're doing with that, honestly. It seems like a peculiar signing. It's a massive contract to an okay guard. I guess this moves Elton Jenkins to center. Jordan Morgan steps in at left guard. Obviously, Zach Tom at right tackle, and Rasheed Walker would stick at left tackle unless you want to go with Josh Simmons here. But I think they do something on the defensive line, and Walter Nolan feels like a Packers pick. SEC defensive lineman. It feels like something that makes a lot of sense for Green Bay. And I think, and this is maybe going to sound like a red flag in a way, but he's got some similar traits that you liked about Devontae Wyatt coming out. And I feel like whereas, Walter Nolan apparently has some maturity issues, right? That maybe drops him a little bit. But in terms of upside in this draft, it's hard to find anyone higher than Walter Nolan, right? He's got such incredible potential. He's as a penetrating 3 tech or 5 tech here. I think it's a great fit in Green Bay. He can get after the QB. He's explosive, and teams pay for these big-time pass rushers, guys that get after the QB. Walter Nolan fits the bill there, and I think even with maturity questions, he ends up being a first-round pick. And if you told me that he ends up being the best player out of this draft class, I would not be surprised whatsoever. He's that level of talent. We'll see if he can build that, throughout an NFL career. As we get to the Vikings at 24, I think they also need to improve their defensive line, and most notably, they need to stop getting run on so much. And Kenneth Grant, I think, helps you do that. Big body, big upside, even as a pass rusher, get a little bit of upside. Grant certainly helps eat up some blockers and lets guys come in and make plays. I like Kenneth Grant. He's got a ton of upside, and I think he's a good fit here to the Vikings at 24. Could also see guard in play, but with Booker off the board, it's really only Donovan Jackson. That's your real only option at guard. And I don't know if you want to do that at 24. It's absolutely an option, but that's not what we're going to do here. As we get to the Texans at 25, they traded Laramie Tunsil today. It's a peculiar move, to say the least. I don't know what they're doing. Tunsil's one of the best tackles in football. Point blank, period, end of discussion. Yes, I get the penalties. Loves a false start, loves a hold. He keeps the quarterback clean. Protecting CJ Stroud on an ascending young Texans team, how is that not a priority? You needed to go out in the draft and do that anyway. And now you've actually managed to get worse on the offensive line before the draft has even happened. How have they done this? Tunsil is a commander. I guess you're really hoping that one of these Ohio State guys is available with the way this has played out. Josh Connerly maybe, but I'm going to go Josh Simmons. He's got a ton of upside. One of the best tackles in this draft. A really good athlete coming back from a major injury. Simmons is a great player. He's going to have to be a starter now at left tackle. It's no longer draft and wait for him to fully rehab from injury type of deal. It's said that he's going to be available close to week 1, right? So he could be a day 1 starter, I suppose, for you, and he might have to be because you traded Laramie Tunsil. I don't know what the Texans are doing. They got back a second and a fourth next year and a third this year. They sent a fourth away. Dude, I don't know what's happening. It's one of the more bizarre trades I've probably ever seen because it doesn't make any sense for the Texans. You like the picks that much, and what's wrong with Tunsil? I know the holds, I know the penalties, right? But you got to keep your young quarterback clean. I don't get it. Rams at 26. I like the DBs available. Jahdae Barron's there. Emeka Egbuka I think makes a ton of sense. They do bring in Devontae Adams, but Jahdae Barron is a stud. He can play in the nickel. I think he's got a chance to play on the boundary as well. He's a playmaking DB wherever you play him, and I think the Rams could certainly use more of those. Ravens at 27. They brought back Ronnie Stanley. Unexpected. I think tackle, maybe not really something they would consider here at 27. I think they'd be upset Jahdae Barron's off the board, but I think you'd be really happy about the available safeties. And I think for the team, for the fit here, Malachi Starks makes a ton of sense. I do want to get Nicky Manwari off the board earlier. He's still available at this point, and he's such an incredible athlete and player. But Starks, I think, is a plug-and-play starter, free safety. Marcus Williams' experiment, probably over at this point. Don't think Kyle Hamilton's really going to be playing free safety for the Ravens, but Starks gives you the flexibility to play really either spot in the back end, plus the nickel. Hamilton obviously has that nickel strong safety flexibility as well. And, maybe you could play him at free safety too. He's got obviously great instincts and some pretty good range as a result, but Starks, really, really instinctive, apparently a leader. It just feels like an amazing fit there in Baltimore as they upgrade their secondary, which certainly could use a little bit of help here. And we got some great edge rushers still available, but talked about why some of these guys might end up falling. We're going to get one of them off the board here. I'm going to end up going... It's the potential off-field stuff for Green and Pierce. It is real. Green has some real allegations. Who knows what that does for his stock? Who knows the validity? But it's worth noting that he could be available at 28. Same thing with James Pierce. Not allegations, but there are character concerns potentially. Again, don't know the validity of those, but being talked about, and he's undersized. Ezra Raku looks pretty clean. Had very good testing in the agility drills and was very productive at Boston College. I don't think it's out of the question he goes before these two guys as a result. And we know the Detroit Lions are really going to value production. Ezaraku off the edge has as much production as anybody, except Mike Green might have one more sack this past season. But really, really good fit there as we get to the Commanders at 29. It's been a weird offseason for them so far. Obviously, traded for Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline. I like that pickup for them. They lost Jeremy Chinn to the Raiders, I believe, in free agency now. So maybe something in the secondary, like Nicky Manwari is like a plug-and-play Jeremy Chinn replacement. I don't think that's out of the question. You bring in Javon Kinlaw, weird contract on the defensive line. John Allen, I guess, is probably gone, maybe. And you trade for Laramie Tunsil. Pretty good offseason for them so far. Edge is in play. And I obviously like Nicky Manwari as a Jeremy Chinn replacement. And it's something I'm really highly considering here. But the edge rushers that are here are also really, really good. It's tough to deny those guys. But again, you lose Jeremy Chinn. This is Jeremy Chinn with better ball skills. Nicky Manwari here to the Commanders at 29. I know my buddy Giraffe Neck Mark's going to like that. South Carolina Gamecock and Commanders fan. The Commanders just brought in another Gamecock in Deebo Samuel, Javon Kinlaw. They're just building the South Carolina Gamecock football team, and Nicky Manwari is, I guess, the newest addition and newest part of that. As we get to the Buffalo Bills at 30, it's fallen great for them. They brought in Josh Palmer, great contract for them in free agency. You got Derek Harmon, Mike Green, James Pierce available. I feel like it's got to be one of those guys. And to get something this big off the edge, I think it would be tough to turn down. Going to go Mike Green, explosive pass rusher, highly productive at Marshall, good against the run. I love him as a player, and the Bills could certainly upgrade their pass rush. Von Miller looks to be gone, right? I think he got cut. At 31, have the Kansas City Chiefs sign Jalen Moore. I guess that's going to be your left tackle. It's an interesting signing, but you're losing Tershawn Wharton to free agency. Need it interior defensive line anyway. Derek Harmon, I think, is an awesome replacement. He's 313 pounds. Very good athlete. Very productive as a pass rusher this past season. And it's just a really good fit there in Kansas City, who I guess have solved left tackle, I guess. And then at 32, last pick of the first round, I'm going James Pierce from Tennessee. Lose Josh Sweat to free agency. He's a Cardinal. Milton Williams is not a true edge, but he's headed to the Patriots. Brandon Graham, I think likely retiring, right? James Pierce, a ton of explosiveness off the edge, a ton of pass rush ability. He's a really, really good player with a really big upside. I would hate to see him fall to Philly, but in this scenario, it's a really good pick for the Eagles. That's my Mock Draft Monday. Made some weird picks, made some fun picks, had some big falls, some big rises. And let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm sure you will, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.